Welcome to Lakeshore Focus, a weekly show highlighting the key issues, important events, and interesting people in our region. I'm Keith Kirkpatrick. There is a program called Leadership Northwest Indiana that strives to enlighten and connect leaders in our region. From this program, they gain perspective on issues, challenges, and opportunities in that same area, similar to the program name, Northwest Indiana. Here to talk about their experience and a recent dip in the television pool are Kathy Neary, Corporate College Executive with Ivy Tech Community College, and Dr. Richard Weigel, the Superintendent of the Portage Township Schools. So you guys like that little dip in the television pool recently?
I like that. That was nicely said.
So maybe we can enlighten our viewers as to, we brought the whole L&I class in here several weeks ago and tortured you. I mean, what did we do? What did we do to you, Kathy?
Well, you gave us a taste of fame for just a few minutes, but we actually had a really good time with our colleagues, taping some of the issues and some of the wonderful opportunities that we have in this region. And at the same time, we got to see each other being taped and watch it, and it was in raw format, so it was a lot of fun.
And Richard, you're kind of an old hand at some of this because you've got a stage background, but we did a briefing too. Did you learn anything new? Tell us a little bit about your background, and then did you learn anything new?
Well, I've had the privilege of being involved with music and theater for a great portion of my life, and have done different shows in different cities, and lived in New York City for about 10 years. But I think the nice thing was, even for me, is just the opportunity again to refresh what I knew and be able to have the conversation that we had. But I enjoyed more listening to my colleagues and the other leaders in Northwest Indiana as they had that opportunity to learn about that perspective of how do I communicate through this medium.
It's kind of interesting because in the program, that's nearly our last session, so we come here to give you all a chance to kind of be in front of the camera and learn a little bit about that. Some have been, some haven't. And also, like you said, to talk about the issues, kind of what have you learned in the program a little bit. Were you struck with anything particularly that was brought up by any of the teams that talked or the individuals?
Quite honestly, I thought it was interesting just to hear about the different perspectives from all the colleagues. There were a lot of different issues we addressed, and it was like we were doing a dress rehearsal every day when you would call us out and ask us for our opinions in classes. So being on camera, hearing the perspectives, what I thought was interesting is one of the topics was food. And how that really identifies the different cultures of the communities around Northwest region.
That was one of the clips we didn't choose because it wasn't, but it was one of the most entertaining ones, particularly their pick of restaurants, I thought. Was there something you picked up on, Richard, you thought was like, that was interesting?
Well, I think the great thing that I picked up from it was the change in perspective, where so many of our leaders are looking at the region and saying how important the region is, how their leadership fits with the vision of the leader of the region moving forward. I thought that was a powerful piece for everybody, not only for the people that were speaking, but for the people that were listening.
We'll come back to talking about the program in a little bit, but what we did was we had some groups of 5, I think, and then we did some one-on-ones. And what I did is I chose a few of the clips, and I wanted you guys to kind of watch the clips and then see maybe what your thoughts were about those clips. So we're going to roll one, which I think was about some of this perception of the region, and we'll hear from this first panel, I think, of 5. So let's take a look at that, okay?
Great.
Great.
I feel fortunate to have lived here my whole life and to have a different perspective of growing up at the beach. My father was a Gary policeman and owned his own business in Miller. So totally different perspective, but it's wonderful to have everybody here and sharing in what we have to offer.
And I would just like to add too, my perspective of the region has changed quite a bit since I first came here. When I first came, like I said, I thought it was a farm town. After being in the area for quite a while, both in Valpo and now Crown Point, I found that there is a quite nice downtown area with good restaurants, entertainment on the weekends, like Troy mentioned. It really is a nice, small community.
Yeah, we've found since we've lived here too that we've kind of grown. It's grown on us, and it's become a great place to live. And we like that it's growing and keeps growing.
Great. Any last comments from anyone before we wrap up our show today?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention really briefly that I think it's interesting and wonderful that this region has a wonderful pride, and it's called the region. I think that's a really nice, prideful point of the region.
So there were some of your colleagues talking. I think we had an attorney there, a university administrator, one of the managers from NIPSCO. Visiting Nurses Association, so pretty interesting group. So how about perceptions? You know, you talked about that a little bit, about how has your perception changed of the region?
Well, I'll start with myself with this one. I'm new to the region, moving here just a couple years ago, and although I can say honestly, I dated a girl from here a long time ago, so I've known the region.
We're
for a
not
long
going to ask
time.
you who that was.
No,
Richard.
please don't, please don't. But I love the region because the quality of life. You know, we think about young people today who are all seeking a quality of life. What is quality of life? And the region offers a quality of life that you can't find in a lot of other places. In many ways, I look at that clip and I hear people speaking those words. When they talk about downtown or the restaurants, they talk about the events that they can go to. And of course, we can't forget the work that is in the region. We have so many opportunities for people. So we're talking about quality.
How did that change for you, Kathy? Did that change during the program for you, kind of your perception of this region?
I don't think my perception changed. I think what it did is it gave me a greater awareness of some other opportunities that were not necessarily something I had considered in the past. Primarily some of the walkways and the trails that were all over the Northwest region. I didn't realize how far they had gone. But as a native of LaPorte, not being a transplant, I was very familiar with a lot of the things that already existed here. But after moving to Illinois for quite some time, it was interesting to see the perception coming from that part of the border, which really they thought of us as just having cornfields, and as if we were kind of in a whole different country in Indiana outside of Illinois, which is only just a few miles over the border. So for me, it was just an opportunity to become more aware, and also it really reinforced my passion and enlightenment about all of the wonderful things we have here.
I think one of the other things, it's kind of tied closely to this perception was, and you both are talking about it a little bit, about the awareness of really what's here and how diverse our group is. So I think our next group, we're talking about things to do in this region. So let's take a look at that clip and see what they have to say.
Okay.
An interesting thing that I've noticed in my time here is that folks that grew up here maybe not necessarily appreciate the region for all that it offers, while as folks like myself who've moved to the region really love everything that this region has to offer. So, and that's today's theme, is highlights of the South Shore. So I'd love to hear from each of you, what are some of the aspects of the region that y'all really love? We'll start over here with you, Paul.
I think it's all about location, location, location. You know, where else can you spend a portion of your day at the Lakeshore and then, you know, drive down Indianapolis Boulevard to Jack's Warehouse and ride a go-kart to take your kids, and then drive another half hour further south and actually get in a tractor and go on a hayride. And that kind of diversity is really what I enjoy about this area.
Paul made a really interesting point about the different things to do here. I thought that was a great comment. I noticed also that was kind of a little bit of a business panel. I think almost everybody on there, two of those guys were business owners. So,
that's correct.
Which was interesting. Again, maybe something you've learned about in the program that you didn't know existed here before. Kathy, you're from here, so was there anything that were you like, I really didn't know that existed here?
Well, I think the part that hit me the most was when we took a bus tour around the region and looked at the Lakeshore and all the improvements that happened on Marquette and over by Burns Harbor and the port, and how they've restored some of those areas that had been damaged by some of the things that we had done in the past with the environment. Restored, made beautiful, and really built that quality of life for people to come and take part of the nature that we have with Lake Michigan.
Richard, there was something that just popped out at you because you're a new guy here, so it's something like, wow, this is really cool, this is here.
It's a different perspective a little bit, Keith, because one of the things, following up with what Kathy said, I love the Lakeshore, but I'm going to tie that to something else. It's a collaboration. What I saw was that we have all these different communities collaborating to make our Lakeshore one of the most spectacular in the world. That's what struck me. and how exciting that is to have people working together like that.
You know, as you were talking about the bus tour, Kathy, I particularly remember on that bus tour, Richard, every time we got off, he was always looking around. I now realize he was looking for that old girlfriend, I think.
That very well could be.
That could have been, because he's like, I wonder if she's still around here, maybe. We talk, we meet. Why don't you each explain how the program kind of functions, like how often does it meet and that kind of thing? So I
Sure.
don't have to say that.
No problem. So it is approximately a 10-month program, including graduation. Meets once a month on Thursdays and sometimes other days, but it's a full 8-hour day with exceptional food and great leadership. It's a time to collaborate, and it's a time to actually discuss and bring in some of the leaders in the area that speak about the different issues, opportunities, and wonderful things we have here.
We do a whole variety of things, so maybe let the audience know a little bit about some of the kind of things that go on in the sessions.
Well, I love we have the session in the hospital, and that was nice hearing about health services and all the different opportunities there. We had the session here in the television studio, which was spectacular and a perspective that a lot of people wouldn't have. We had a session at the airport. Okay, I don't know if everybody had that one, but I had the privilege of that one with LNI 39. We had our session with, at the Michigan City, talking with city officials, and a session in Portage, which was wonderful, and talking about the Lakeshore and the dunes and all those different types of things. The session where we got to visit, I think that was the tour of the farm. Got to visit the farm. So each session was uniquely different spaces, different places. Where we all come together, and because we get to know each other, we get to have these conversations not just about the location, but about what we're learning about the region from each other. Right. It was a continual learning piece.
You know, Richard, I'm sorry, Keith, but I have to just say, I'm surprised that you forgot the most important part, education at Ivy Tech.
Well, I had my particular viewpoint on that one, but I spoke up maybe a little more than I should because I have a very strong view on education, but I did enjoy that. You know.
Well, I think it's interesting, again, that we talk about these issues, and there's kind of a theme every month, as you talked about. We bring in speakers and panels, and we do a lot of activities. So I think our next group panel was talking about one of those issues. So they focused on a short discussion about that issue, which I'm trying to remember, I think it was about land use. So let's take a look at what they had to say.
How do you see housing and development being affected in some of those parts of the area?
No, I think where I live in Couts, I see a lot more of the pressure from the urban pushing further out and some of the sprawl coming, and seeing more and more of our farmland being developed. And working in agriculture and coming from a farm family, that's something that's pretty important to us as a family. So, for example, when my great-grandfather was a farmer, he produced enough crops to feed 19 people. And when my grandfather was a farmer, he produced enough crops to feed 26 people. My father's currently a farmer. He produces enough crops to feed 155 people, and that's on the same amount of land. And farmland being such a precious thing, and with a growing population, it's really important, being in the rural part of the region, that we maintain that part, that it continues to be in agricultural production.
Okay, now we're getting down to our last minutes here. Is there anything else any of you would like to share with some of the housing and development that is going on in the region?
Well, I would just like to say that it seems like this area has been doing a wonderful job as far as taking a look at what they currently have and trying to make it better or to repurpose it so they can use what they do already have, as opposed to continuing to sprawl out into the agricultural areas, which, as you've said, is kind of a concern.
You know, watching that clip reminds me how much I learn from the people who are in the program, because it's not just, I think, our presenters and all the people we bring into you, but listening to the perspectives of all the leaders in that room. Some take that you have, some takeaway from the program, from somebody else's perspective, where you're like, that's really an interesting thought, or I didn't know that before, or
Well, I hadn't thought about, as it was mentioned, how the land use, we wanted to consider our land use and consider how we're protecting our farmland, because we do need it. But at the same time, I like the perspective that was given that we're producing more with less land than we've ever produced. We want to continue doing that so that we can feed our population. But of course, by doing that, it also opens up the opportunity for us to use our agricultural space and use our downtown space even more effectively. So I think that perspective was something I hadn't thought about until I heard it from that group.
How about you, Kathy? Something?
Yes, kind of in the same vein as land use, when we had the session on architecture and how things are built in planning. And I thought what struck me the most was the address that was given about how Maryville was planned out and how the quality of life indicators typically include walking. And that wasn't something that was actually considered when they were putting together the plan for the Maryville community back in the day, and how important that is now, and they're trying to actually go back and fix that. So I thought that was really interesting, in addition to the amount of green space what we're using when we're putting a bunch of pavement and concrete all around and not considering where is that water going to drain. So those kind of things I think are critical for us to consider as we talk about future communities.
I think what's always interesting in the program is, and I will tell people, we have probably some of the most conservative people around and some of the most liberal people around, and all in the same room sharing thoughts. And we've never had a fight. We've never had anybody kill each other. We've never had anybody yell at each other. But, you know, we'll have people who say, you know, we're sprawling too much, and somebody else will say, but we need to grow, you know, and add. So it's a different perspective, like you said. In the end, I think there's some results to this program, some impact, and we have a couple of one-on-one videos to show. So let's take a look at this one, I think, with Diane, all right? What aspect of the L&I program has affected you the most?
You know, I think probably because I'm probably the senior member of the group, it's listening to the ideas and exchanging information with a variety of people and a variety of ages. And, you know, grandmas come along and think you know it all, but you find that you don't. And there's so many things that I didn't know that you are directing me to. Fields that I wasn't involved in before, I'm very eager to learn more about them. And I think it's been a great learning experience.
Everybody watching the show is so used to seeing the front of me, they got to see the back of me in that one. I thought that was my best side, probably.
Actually, I was going to compliment you on your hair. It was all nicely done in the back.
So talk just briefly about the diversity of the people in the program, because here's Diane, who obviously is a little older. She always pointed that out, but diversity of the people in the program.
Well, I'd like to go with Alex. Alex was always a joy to listen to and to talk to. A young man who is 20, I don't think it's 26, 27, 28, someplace in there, who has these wonderful visions for his business and for the region, and just a tremendous job that he's doing and making changes in where he goes, and runs a wonderful business and changing. But from Diane to Alex, and the conversations that everybody has with each other, giving each other their perspective and their view of not only what they're currently doing, but where they want to go. There wasn't a single person in the L&I classes that doesn't have a vision of where they want to go. That's exciting.
That is exciting. How about you, Kathy?
Well, I actually enjoyed learning more about some of the entrepreneurs in the group too. So Neil from Metro Recycling, hearing how he built this company, started in the 80s. He had no formal education, and really kind of bringing that from the ground up, and how he's really engaged now from moving from Illinois to Indiana to be here. But in addition to that, I thought was most interesting was hearing Brandy at one of the most recent sessions saying how what's important to her is purposeful leadership. And that, I think, is what, for me, is the most impactful when it comes to L&I. It's not training for leadership, it's being aware of how you can be a very purposeful leader.
So the last clip we've got is, again, about the effect the program had on people. So let's take a look at our one pastor who was in the program. So let's see what Greg has to say. How has your L&I experience changed your understanding of the region?
I would say two ways. One is it's certainly broadened the experience. Serve a church in St. John, live in Crown Point, definitely been exposed to southern Lake County. But there's a sense in which when you get to be present in northern Lake County and Porter County, you get a real regional concept. And I think if we all work together, we'd of course be a lot better off. The other element is the network, right? I've made friends in the midst of L&I, and I think that's been the biggest value of it all.
So in the last couple minutes, the question I have for each of you is, what has this program, what kind of impact has it had on you personally? What's the impact for you, Kathy?
Well, for me, I really feel as though I work with a lot of the organizations that were at the table for the leadership. And I have never actually seen the faces of some of those people who work in those organizations. And I am very vested in connections. I think that they make us successful in everything we do. So for me, it actually broadened my community sense of awareness on who those people are and the diversity of talents that we had at the table that we can continue forever.
Okay. Richard.
These are wonderful people that are in LNI. All of them are leaders. All of them want to make a difference for the people of our community. The connections that I've made, first of all, I'll backtrack and say I believe that education is the bedrock of a community, that a community is built on the great education there is. So the connections that I have made through LNI help me to do a better job for the children of our communities. And so I think that those connections are important, but also that each person in LNI grows in their leadership. I mean, I look back to the first time we met, to the last time we met, and the growth of individuals. There's a phrase I like to use, that leadership can be learned, but leadership cannot be taught.
Okay. So in the last couple seconds here, you had a great closing the other day, just real quick about your perception of the leadership. So in about 10 seconds, what did you say the other day about what you saw in the leadership here?
I find that there's more leaders in the region, in Northwest Indiana, than any place else I've lived in the country.
I really appreciate having both of you on the show and being here to share your experience. We should probably say to people, if they're interested in this program, they could go to the South Shore Leadership Center website and they could find out all they want to know about it, because otherwise they'll be emailing us and asking. So thanks for both being here.
Thank you.
And being in the
us.
program.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you very much.
After 13 years of working with the Leadership Northwest Indiana program and ushering nearly 900 community leaders through it, I've learned quite a bit and have come to a few conclusions about the people of this region we call Northwest Indiana. For years, I heard many of us say that change was needed and change was coming. Well, I think change is here. Let me share with you a few of those changes, and all of them are about the perceptions of the folks who live here. For years, I have heard person after person making disparaging comments about this place. It made me wonder if we truly think this lowly of ourselves, or do we have a bad habit of complaining and only talking about the negatives? We have been our worst enemy. I remember learning the concept of, if you don't think highly of yourself, who will? The change, we are getting better. Frequently, I will now hear phrases such as, this is a great place to live and raise a family. Look at the industrial might of this region. And we are one of the best kept secrets in the Chicagoland area. The next improvement is our newly discovered notice of all the great things here. Historically, we didn't pay attention to what was directly in front of us. We failed to see the diversity and quality of the people who live and work here. Our rich cultures, ethnic roots, and strong values are the hallmark of our people. This physical place has stunning dunes, a giant lake, fertile farmland, a labyrinth of waterways, woodland preserves, and beautiful parks. Those spaces are filled with a biodiversity that can only be topped by a few places in the world. We produce high-quality steel and fuel that powers planes, cars, and homes. We manufacture innovative products that are shipped all over the world. We provide outstanding customer service, are visited by millions of tourists, and feed the nation. Lastly, we have been a disparate group of city-states who built invisible barriers. That is also changing. We are beginning to see ourselves as one. There is more cooperation and collaboration on projects and problems than ever before. We are discovering that collectively, we are stronger. We have been waiting for change to come for a long time. I think that change is finally here, and I welcome it. Thanks for watching our show. This is our final broadcast for 2015, and we deeply appreciate your support of this public broadcasting station. You can always wish us a happy holiday season or tell us about the good things you see in and know about Northwest Indiana. Our website and email address are both listed on your screen. Have a wonderful and blessed season of celebration. We will be back with you in 2016. Until then, I'm Keith Kirkpatrick saying, make a positive difference in our world today and throughout the coming year.